Show me the money.
Just looking good, but I think I'm taking too long.
Back to the spot for a Glock. I took a loss over floss, but still got a knock.
Money! I'm gonna call Jerry. Does that make you feel good just to say that?
All right, show me the money. NFL picks for week number 9 today on the podcast. Joining me, a diehard Giant fan. We've heard him rant plenty of times. You're a longtime listener to this podcast. Justin Diaz is here. Justin, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thanks again for having me on. I always enjoy doing this.
Yeah.
I feel like as a Giants fan, we are in Groundhog's Day. Here we are, 2-6 again at the middle of the season. It's just more of the same. It's great. So much fun being a Giants fan these days. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Have you been tempted to go learn how to ice sculpt yet?
Ice sculpt?
Yeah.
But I don't understand the reference.
That's something Bill Murray did in Groundhog Day. You learned ice sculpt.
Oh, geez. Oh, man. That went right over my head. I'm sorry. I'm tired. I'm going to use the excuse that I'm training for a marathon and I'm just always tired, but that's a lame excuse. I should do that. Geez. Yeah, it's a sad time. It's been sad time. It's not even new. And I've just come to the point of acceptance as a Giants fan. I've gone into every season for the last 3 knowing we're going to be terrible. So it's not even disappointing anymore. It just fulfills my expectations.
Yeah, a little inside the baseball here. People who listen to the podcast. Justin texting back after the loss to the Atlanta Falcons in week 3 saying, get me on the podcast. So it's a matter of finding the spot. And then I saw they had the Chiefs come up. I'm like, this is going to be an epic meltdown here from the Giants in some way. And I was correct because the way they lost that game is inexcusable on Monday.
Oh, it's just terrible clock management. The Chiefs look horrible on a not necessarily related to the Giants note, but Mahomes doesn't look right. I was watching with a friend of mine, Jeff, who you know from high school. He said, and I kind of agree, Mahomes looks so bad that you have to question if he's injured, but that's a different story. The game was theirs for the taking, and I hate football cliches, but it's very applicable here. Bad teams find ways to lose, and that's just what the Giants have been now for a long time. And for a coach that preached accountability as his big thing at the press conference, and he just has no understanding of clock management, and rather just then saying, oh, I messed that up. It's just objective. I messed up. I need to be better. He blames the headsets, lies, like blatantly lies. And it's not even disputable. It's black and white. He lied. He wasn't just saying it was this game. He's been saying it's all season. And the NFL immediately came out and said, no, that's not true. There haven't been any reported issues, and which is actually kind of funny because the NFL, the one time they'll give a forceful response is when you criticize one of their business partners. But Joe Judge is pathetic. I mean, in case you're wondering what I think of him, he's pathetic. He's a clown.
Yeah, I mean, the headset thing, I saw that. My eyes started bugging on Twitter. I said, that's the excuse he came up with, and you're correct. The league came out on Tuesday and said, we never heard from the Giants during this game or this year about issue with the headsets, and it was clear that Joe Judge just lied to cover the fact that he made some terrible clock management decisions. And you combine that with his strange play calling down near the goal line where they run a 2-yard out on 3rd and 2 and kick a field goal instead of going for a touchdown. You can point back to that as one of the big reasons they lost this game. The conservative nature, the clock management, the lack of discipline, it just makes you wonder what exactly the Giants saw in him a year ago when they hired him.
I mean, I totally agree. I forgot that there's so many bad things that happened. I forgot they kicked the field goal on the 4-yard line. That's incredibly, it's just a weak move where you don't have confidence in your team, which I understand the Giants are bad. So I don't blame them for not having confidence, but you have to go for a touchdown there. I mean, I haven't read anything about the analytics, but I'm certain they would support the fact that you're supposed to go for it on that. What they saw in him, I don't know back then, but now I know I still know Giant fans that support him and say, well, the roster stinks. They're decimated by injuries. That's true. But I've noticed a lot of Giants fans conflate reasons, or there are legitimate reasons for why someone might not be performing, but they also, if you're evaluating someone like a head coach or a position, like a quarterback, for instance, they have to show you positives to support the fact that you might think they might be good in the future. What does Joe Judge do well? Their offense stinks and is uncreative. Their defense is middling and uncreative. And it's not great. It's not terrible. Last year was very good. It's regressed significantly, but it's still not terrible. The clock management's terrible. They're undisciplined. and they lose every close game that they're in. So where is he showing you promise? I can't think of a single thing that he's good at other than when they hired him, he was articulate and good at preaching things that every football fan wants to hear: discipline, aggression. We're going to fight until the last second. Great. I could say that. You could hire me and I'll say those things. Doesn't mean I know what the hell I'm doing when it comes to coaching.
Yeah, that's certainly a fair point. I mean, we heard all the offseason about, the discipline, we're running the laps, and I want us to be a disciplined football team. And then they've lost 2 games this year basically because of penalties, because you had the Washington game where you had, I forget who jumped off sides on the field goal attempt.
Dexter Lawrence jumped off sides.
He jumped off sides, and then they have a pick of Mahomes on that free play there, and he turns out another Giant jumped off sides. Chiefs go down and score a touchdown to win the game. So that's 2 games you could say right there. And I know Joe Judge loves saying right there, but right there you had 2 games you could have won, but now you don't. And this is a team that you feel like, given the games that they had, they could easily beat 500, but they're 2-6. I think speaks more to the coach.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know if the analytics support me on this, but I'm a big believer. A lot of these penalties, offsides, this and that, it does come down to a lot of luck if you think about it, because these are individual players making mistakes. Yes, your team could be disciplined as a whole, but if someone jumps off sides because the quarterback had a good hard count, it's a bad play by the player. It's a good play by the quarterback. Unless you have a repeat offender, then a lot of times it comes down to the luck of the draw in my mind. So if a coach's calling card is discipline, that's not going to be a good coach more than likely. When was the last team that you said, this team disciplines their way to the Super Bowl? Never. They had a great offense, or they had a great defense, or maybe they had good at both, or they had a great quarterback. There's never been, the Patriots of 2001 were just a great disciplined team. No, they had a great freaking defense. Or the Chiefs from 2 years ago, historically good offense. The Bucs last year, there's a well-rounded team. No one's ever said, this team's, I like their chances of the Super Bowl because they don't commit a lot of penalties and they try hard. It's bullshit. It's just this old school football mentality. It fits perfectly with what the Giants want and what their fan base wants. Old school, punch them in the mouth, run the football. We stink. It's freaking Groundhog's Day with this team. Just backwards thinking, hustling backwards. We're never innovative. We don't think forward. We wait until we give every player and coach we ever get every excuse under the book, rather than just look at them critically and saying, you know what, maybe they do have excuses, but at the same time, on the flip side, they haven't shown us anything to prove that they're actually good anymore or ever. We did it with Eli the last couple of years of his career. I was a huge Eli Manning fan. He was a fantastic player. He delivered us 2 Super Bowls. Those last 3 years, he stunk. And everyone, including the Giants organization, well, the line stinks, this stinks, or there were these injuries. But if you watched him, he also was bad. He had excuses, but he was also bad. Daniel Jones. I'm on the fence about Daniel Jones, but I think he's at best average, maybe solid. He's clearly not a future star, but same thing. The line stinks. The skill players aren't great. It's kind of true, but at the same time, if you watch him objectively, he hasn't shown anything to make you think he's a future star. It's a repetitive theme with the Giants and their fans. It's don't evaluate things critically. Look for the excuses for why they might be bad and just give them that out, rather than actually say, you know what, this guy isn't working out. Let's get something new.
Yeah, I mean, the point of the coaching is great, because you look at my team this past week. I mean, we had that starting quarterback, they have a number 1 receiver. The Jet coaching staff came away for Mike White, for all people, for 400 yards to beat the 5-2 Bengals at home, and that was a great win for the Jets. Like, when's the last time the Giants really had a win like that? You came out like, wow, the Giant coaches staff really had that game plan today. We came up with this brilliant win.
That's a great point. I don't remember. I mean, maybe Jones's rookie year, they had that game against the Bucs where he came in and lit the world on fire, and that was the last game that was actually impressive. But Dan Orlovsky said it, and it really stuck with me. He watches a ton of game film, and he loves watching film, but he hates watching the Giants because they're so archaic. They don't do anything creative. You know exactly what they're going to do. It's very repetitive, and it's almost never where they have a nice play where you say, wow, that was a nice play call. That was a nice scheme. That the player won the battle against his matchup because the scheme got him open. They never do. It's the player has to execute well, and they don't do anything creative. And it's been that way for as long as I can remember. It's just, I mean, I keep saying it, but it's Groundhog's Day. It should be called Giants Day. John Mara Day.
Yeah, speaking of John Mara, I mean, he came out recently, gave Joe Judge a vote of confidence. He didn't give one to Gettleman, which makes me think that the current mode of thinking of John Mara is, if we don't make the playoffs this year, which is more likely than not, that I'm going to fire Dave Gettleman, Joe Judge will stay, and then Joe Judge will be picked a new GM. And just to me, it's just more continuing to kick the can down the road on the potential blowing it up that you guys need to do. This happened back in 2017 when they were interviewing the GMs, and Louis Riddick came in there and said, you guys need to rebuild. And Dave Gettleman came in and said, no, we could win right now with Eli Manning. And John Mara took that optimistic view, and now you've been paying for it ever since. So I would be terrified of Joe Judge picking the GM and trying to win now, just continuing to kick the can down of what needs to be done for this team.
Oh, 100%. That is what's going to happen at best. And I say at best because it wouldn't shock me if they keep Gettleman again, because the Giants have been famous for winning 2 or 3 meaningless games towards the end of the season. So their record's 6-10 instead of 4-12, or this year there's 17 games. So the Maras, you're actually Dan Dugan, who's been on this podcast before. He wrote something that just perfectly put it. They squint and tilt their head and make something terrible look okay, rather than evaluate it critically. So yes, I do. If I had to guess, they'll fire Gettleman, keep Judge, which is just awful because the reality is they'll probably stink again next year. So then you have a coach who's had 3 bad years in a row. So you basically have to fire him. And then you're going to have a GM who just finished his first year. He's going to hire a new coach. Then this is kind of crazy to think this far ahead, but that's what you have to do. So let's say you fire Judge after next year. You have your new GM going into year 2, hires a new coach. They stink again. Then what do you do? Like it's insanity. But the reality is that is probably what they're going to do because that's the Giants' way. And a lot of people make this mistake in thinking continuity by itself leads to success. And they point to teams like the Browns and say, well, look at them. They've cycled through all these bad coaches and GMs. And well, yes, they cycled through bad coaches and bad GMs as they should have, because if someone's bad, you don't just keep them and hope that they get better. Yes, there are certain times where teams have pulled the plug too soon, but we're talking about guys that are obviously and objectively bad. Like David Gettleman, it's a disgrace that he was kept last year. This year, it's just it's pathetic, and it makes you. It was like it's Isaiah Thomas territory with the Knicks, where you start to wonder, what is this relationship behind the scenes? Like, is there like such a strong personal connection that they just feel bad firing him? Which, yeah, he was sick and that's terrible, but he's also horrible at his job. It's long past the time for him to go. And honestly, it's upsetting to me that they'll probably let it frame it as a retirement. It's personal with me at this point with David. I want him to be fired in public. I want him to start breaking down crying. I want him to I don't want anything terrible to happen as a person. Something inconvenient, like he's on the highway late at night and his tire blows out and he's stuck there for like 12 hours and he has no cell phone service. So then the next day, like, he's inconvenienced major leagues. In all seriousness, it's sports. It doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Sorry to say that on your sports podcast. I'm as big of a sports fan as it comes, but I don't like him as a person at this point, which is, I acknowledge, is very irrational. So I want something, or maybe, I don't know, like he's at getting a cup of coffee and his credit card got shut off and he's embarrassed in front of a long line of people. Something very annoying, but not to alter his life. But that was a mini tangent that probably isn't going to make a lot of sense when you listen to it, but it made sense in my head.
It was entertaining. I'll give you that.
I'm glad. But long story short, yes, I do think they're going to keep Judge, which is a terrible mistake. They need to blow everything up at this point. They've been bad for so long. I still think there's a holdout of Giant fans that think we're just this away and we're just this small little alteration away. It's not a fixable problem where you just plug in a hole. It's a process problem. We don't have the right processes in place for evaluating talent, figuring out how to construct a roster with the salary cap, and just, we don't understand roster building from the floor up. And that needs to be blown up. Everyone that's brought in needs to be new, and the Maras need to stay the heck away once they figure out those right people. And that's not going to happen if they keep Judge and then just the continuity. Continuity doesn't work if you don't have the right people.
Yeah, and the record speaks for itself. Since the boat game, they've had the worst record in the league. That tells you all you need to know.
Yeah, everyone loves Bill Parcells. You are what your record says you are, and it sounds so simplistic, but it's true. Like the Joe Judge went 6-10 last year and 2-6 this year. I think people think it's admirable somehow when you lose games close. If you lose a couple of games close and you finish 8-8 or something, or 7-9, maybe even 6-10, you could say, you know what? If they just did this and this different, maybe next year it'll improve. But we're doing it again this year, so if you keep losing close games, that's not good. Eventually, you need to win games. But now Judge is what, 8-16? And he's probably. If I had to guess, the Giants win 4 or 5 games this year. 11 wins in 2 years isn't cutting it, and there's no reason to be optimistic about this guy. I'm beating a dead horse, but move on. He stinks. It stinks to have to cycle through in our third coach in 2 years or less. But you made 3 bad decisions in a row, so you have to live with it. It's unfortunate, but it demonstrates how bad the organization has been.
Yeah, and you mentioned the upcoming schedule. I mean, they played a rough one so far. They have a lot of games down the stretch they could win. They have Philly twice. They have the Dolphins. They have Washington. They have the Bears. This week is the Raiders too. I think the Raiders is winnable because the Raiders come in here. They have the distraction of the tragic Henry Ruggs situation where he's stupidly driving 156 miles an hour drunk and kill someone, and now he's off the team, and that's going to be a major detriment to their focus. I think this is a spot here where the Giants could easily win this football game.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a horrible story all around, but absolutely, I totally agree. It's very feasible. I hate being at this point as a fan, but I always root for them to lose. I just don't want there to be any reason for them to think, well, you know what? We kind of turned our fortunes around. We went 7-10 or 6-11. So let's just try it one more time. This one more time keeps turning into another one more time. And then before you know it, there were 5 straight one more time seasons, and we've wasted years of our life. It sounds crazy, but the Giants were a big part of my life, like where I genuinely looked forward to watching them and talking about them and dissecting the games with my friends. But I meant to say were, because while I still watch them and think about them, I'm past the point of really caring anymore, because it would be insane for me to, because I know with a certainty that they're going to stink, and it's going to upset me tremendously if I have any sort of hope. So I just go in knowing they're going to stink, and that's it. So I'm at the point where, yes, I do root for them to lose every single week, so it'll change, because yeah, they'll win a meaningless game here and there and then still finish out of the playoffs. What good does that do? Because I know it's not going to get better the next year.
Yeah, let's get to the picks. The reason why you're here.
It sounds like a plan.
Yeah. Mutual friend of ours, Anthony Cowley, was here last week. He went 1-2 on the week. He took the Bengals laying the points against the Jets. He lost that one. He had the Bucks laying the 5 against the Saints. Lost that one. He did have the Cowboys laying a 2.5, so he got that one correct. So 1-2 in the week for Anthony.
Oh, I hope Anthony's doing well. It's been years since I've spoken to him, but I will improve upon that. I will go 3-0, and I will beat you this week. I take a lot of pride in these picks.
I know you do. I had a rough one last week. I went 0-3.
Oh my God!
It was awful.
Shoot, who did you pick?
I had the Buccaneers. We had a family pick. I'll be on that. We had the -5. I had the Chargers laying 5.5 against the Patriots, and then I lost that one. And I had our good friend Dan DiMartini's Colts laying the 1.5, and Carson Wentz me out of that one.
Oh Jesus, that was one of the worst throws I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
awful. Left-handed out of the end zone, brutal.
It was brutal. So on the year, Team Challenge had a rough one so far. They're 8-15-1. I have not done much, but I'm only 11-13 on the year. So it's been a challenge this year, but we're gonna see if we can get some dueling 3-0 weeks here going. So we're going to start the picks now. Justin, as the guest, you can go first. Who are you going with pick number 1?
I am taking the Ravens -6 at home against the Vikings. I just think the Ravens coming off a bye week. I feel like they're a very strong team. I know they had a really bad game against the Bengals. So I think that they should be bouncing back. Lamar, I think, has been playing fantastic football, the best of his career, even better than his MVP year. So I like them against the Vikings.
Yeah, I think that I think that.
Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I think that Viking pick. I think that's one I can get behind one pick against Minnesota, because last week they had the spot of all spots to win. They're playing the Cowboys at home without Dak Prescott. they finally yuck up that game to Cooper Rush. I mean, I can't pick the Vikings after that one, so I can't blame you there.
Right. That's really a bad loss. Like when you're a team like that's fighting for a wild card and you need every win you can. Kirk Cousins is just the ultimate misleading stats guy, maybe in sports. Like I've talked to myself, I think every year I fall, oh, Kirk Cousins, he has good stats. And then you watch him and he misses every big throw he needs to make.
Yeah, sure. Where are you going? Pick number 2.
I'm taking the Patriots minus 3.5 in Carolina. I'm not full. I see a lot of people have really come around on the Patriots saying, oh, Belichick, he's a genius, he's back. I'm not fully buying it. I do think the defense is good. Mac Jones, I still think he's really a game manager, which is fine. Like, he's accurate. After saying how the Panthers played against the Giants, maybe I'm biased, but Darnold is just awful. And I think the Patriots are going to just shut him out. I see the Patriots winning that game pretty easily, actually. I think the line's low.
Yeah, I think the one counter on that I will say is it sounds like Christian McCaffrey might play this game. It makes them a very, very different team than the one the Giants saw. And I saw McCaffrey-led Panther team give my Jets fits the first week. So that's a stay away from me. That's my personal opinion.
Fair. I'll never count on Christian McCaffrey to do anything until he shows he can stay healthy for a string of games anymore. I hate to say it. It stinks. He's one of the best talents in the league, but him coming back is not something I can count on. I know he's probably going to play, but who's to say he's going to be 100% or even play the whole game? That's my thought on that.
All right, it's pick number 2. We're going to pick number 3.
I am taking the Bengals minus 2.5 against the Browns. I know the Bengals are coming off a loss against your Jets, but I just think the Browns are on the precipice of becoming a dumpster fire. Baker looks awful. Beckham has just not worked in Cleveland, but that whole situation is a distraction. I'm pretty sure he's not playing at this point. I think the Bengals will bounce back and take advantage of the Browns' dysfunction.
Yeah, I think I can see the lie behind that pick. I know the Baker's playing hurt definitely hurts the Browns. For me, after what the Bengals did last week, I want to see it again before I go back to the well with the Bengals. That's my personal thought.
That's fair. That's total sense.
All right, so your picks are on the board. I'm up now. Pick number 1. I am actually going to go to your team. I'm going to take the Giants getting the 3 at home against the Raiders. I think the Ruggs situation, tragic as it is, I think this is a second big distraction for the Raiders this week. A lot of questions they don't need about the situation. And to fly east, they never play well at MetLife. They almost lost to the bad Jets last year. They lost to the Jets there in 19. And the Giants have a habit of winning these kind of games that you don't really want them to win, and they're going to find a way to show up and win this game heading their bye. You can give the idea they're going to suck the fans back into the second half, and, we can make a wild card run. We have an easy schedule, so I think that's what happens here. You're going to take the Giants at home as a home dog, getting the 3. Pick 1.
I actually think that's a smart pick because, the Giants are kings of convincing the fans and ownership that they're on the verge of turning it around. I do think the Raiders are far better, but the Henry Ruggs situation is just awful, and I could see that easily being a distraction.
All right, pick number 2. They burned me last week. I'm going to try it again because the line is so low for some reason. I'm going to go back to the Chargers, laying the 1.5 against the Eagles. I do not think the Eagles are good. Detroit is just god-awful. Philly had trouble moving the ball against competent teams. I think the Chargers had a little bit of rust coming off that bye against New England. I think they come out angry this week. They also play at 4 in the East Coast, which is actually an advantage for them because they have to play at 10 a.m. body time. I know you love that term, but I think this game, they're going to come back out here. They're going to come out firing. I think they're going to blow the Eagles out of the water. And for some reason, only a 1.5. So if they win close, I get it. So give me the Chargers laying the 1.5, pick 2.
I like that pick. I agree. The Eagles aren't good. I still think the Chargers are pretty darn good. I love their coach. I think he's going to make adjustments, get Herbert back on track. And I always love when people pick against the Eagles because they're my least favorite franchise in sports. I hate them. I think their fans are all terrible people. And I'll always support someone picking against the Eagles.
All right, it's pick number 2. Pick number 3, I'm going to Monday night. I'm taking the Bears getting 6.5 points against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know the Steelers have won 2 in a row. They have not scored many points doing that. They only picked up 15 against the Browns last week. Chicago's a capable defense, and I just can't lay 7 points with the Steelers at home. I know the Steelers are betting better, but they don't score. That's a lot to lay for a team that doesn't score points. The Bears managed to put up 22 against the Niners last week, so I think the Bears will keep this close. I'm going to take all the points in Chicago, pick 3.
Yeah, I get the logic. I think Big Ben, I'm pretty sure I've played with kids in a flag football league that have a stronger arm than Big Ben at this point. They can't score. I won't buy the Steelers as a contender this year. I don't typically like picking teams on the road that I just don't see winning the game, regardless of the line. But I get with that. That's my counterpoint. But I agree that the Steelers are really struggling offensively. So that is kind of a big spread.
All right, so to reset the picks of the week, Justin has gone with the New England Patriots laying 3.5 in Carolina against the Panthers, the Ravens laying 6 at home against the Minnesota Vikings, and the Bengals laying 2.5 at home against the Cleveland Browns. I have gone with the New York Giants, a 3-point home dog against the Las Vegas Raiders. I've gone with the Chargers laying 1.5 in Philadelphia against the Eagles. And last but not least, on Monday night, the Chicago Bears getting 6.5 and against the Steelers. Those are your picks for week number 9 on the Just End the Suffering podcast. Next week on the picks, I'm going to bring back a good friend of mine, Jersey Jarky. We're going to talk about his Chargers. So we'll see how that Charger-Eagle pick ends up working out for me.
All right. Well, I hope it works out because I always root against the Eagles, but I still want to beat you. I hope that's the only pick that works out because the competitive side is I want to go 3-0 and I'll take you going 1-2. No offense, not personal.
Yeah.
Competitive nature.
Yeah, I don't think the Challenger side's gone 3-0 since week 1.
Well, hopefully that changes this week. It's going to. I'm confident.
All right. And one last piece of business here. We're going to do the knockout pick. I'm going to give out my knockout pick on the podcast. Last week, I took the Chiefs in the knockout pick. So that worked out pretty well. You know, the Giants tried to make it interesting.
Yeah. Oh, so you're doing a survivor pool in this, like, on the podcast, essentially?
Yeah, I get my knockout pick every week. So I started week 1. I said, as long as I'm alive, I'm going to keep going. So I've not had an incorrect pick yet.
Oh, wow. And man, I hope you did a real survivor pool. Is making it this far is pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I've had a good run. It's gone San Francisco, Cleveland, Carolina, Buffalo, Tampa, LA Rams, Cardinals, and now the Chiefs. This week's pick, I'm going with the Dallas Cowboys at home against the Broncos. Sounds like Dak Prescott going to be up to go in this game. He's there. They are not losing at home to Denver.
Yeah, that's an easy one. The Dallas looks different this year. I know there's been many years of people saying that, but they look very, very good. I think they're probably a top 4 or 5 team in the NFL. So that's a very safe pick. And Denver, I mean, they traded Vaughn. It looks like they're not even playing for this year. So I think that's a safe pick. All
right, so that's my pick. Not look at the week. We'll see if I make it to week 10. And Justin, thank you for coming on here. If you want to find on social media, I know you're on the Instagram now. You want to get that handle out?
Sure. It's man, what is my Instagram? You put me on the spot. I think it's Justin F. Diaz _. Does that sound right?
It does sound right.
Yep, Justin F. Diaz _. That's me. I'm an avid poster. That's not true. I have 5 posts. But thanks for having me on. I really always enjoy talking about football and venting my feelings for the Giants' misery and incompetence. It's honestly free therapy. So you could probably charge me for the therapy sessions. It's well worth it for me. And I really do appreciate you having me on, Mike.
No problem. For the people who want to follow Just on Instagram, you follow for the stories. There are a lot of good stories.
Thank you. It's mostly just me running, the occasional going out story. Feel free. And thanks again, Mike.